What's up, everyone? Welcome to my Week 2 NBA summary video. We got lots to get to. We're doing my players of the week. We're doing some stats that matter. We got this whole Morant situation to talk about. But what I wanted to start this week's video on is a small team. You might not have heard of them. They don't get a ton of coverage in the NBA, and that is the Los Angeles Lakers. They are, as of right now, only second behind the Thunder in the West. They are 7-2, and that is without LeBron for the whole season. That is with Luka missing games. That is with Austin Reeves missing games. Gabe Vincent has missed time. A few other players have been in and out of the lineup, and yet they're still 7-2. And so then that begs the question, are the Lakers actually contenders? And when I say contenders, I mean, do they actually have a shot to win the NBA Finals? And I'm going to just jump right to it. I think they are legitimate contenders. I think they are one of those teams in the West that have the best shot at, one, taking out the Thunder, because I picked the Thunder at the beginning of the season. I think they are still the best team in the West and probably the NBA. But the Lakers would be on my short list outside of that. And to me, there's a couple reasons why. When I think about finals contenders and when I think about a good playoff team, to me, there's two things that stand out. I mean, there's really lots of other things that you need to be a legitimate contender. But for me, two things stand out when I'm thinking about a really serious playoff team. The first is you need a superstar. You need an MVP candidate. You need a top 10 player in the NBA. You can make the case you don't need that. The Pacers were a good example. Tyrese Halliburton, a great player. Don't know if I'd quite put him in the top 10. But for the most part, when you look at the past history, you need a superstar. And the Lakers have that in Luka Doncic. We've talked about him before. He's in shape. He looks like just a man on a mission after everything that went down last year. And I think having Luka on this Lakers team at least raises their floor. And that was the one thing that I said last year. Depending on the fit, depending on the players they can get around Luka, that would determine whether or not they could win a title and win a title within the next couple of years. But having Luka for the Lakers at a minimum raises their floor. Because when you have Luka, as long as he's healthy, he's going to keep you in ball games. And the other good thing about Luka is, unlike some stars that we've seen, when playoffs come, he is only going to get better. He has a playoff riser, unlike some other guys we've seen in recent memory. And so the Lakers know they have one of the best players in the regular season. Come the playoffs, he's only going to get better. So that's pretty clearly the first reason to pick the Lakers, is they have a superstar that can lead them in Luka. The second criteria for me is almost just as important, and it gets lost sometimes when you're talking about these superstars. You know, when you think of the past champions, you think of, SGA last year, you think of Tatum, you think of Jokic, you think of Giannis, and you do need that. But the second criteria for me is you also need depth. And in particular, you need playoff depth. And I think that's the difference sometimes in good regular season teams versus good playoff teams. Because when it comes down to it, you need players and you need depth that you're going to trust throughout the playoffs. Yes, you need depth throughout the regular season. I think guys like Nick Smith are a great example for the Lakers. Maybe this is the start of something different and new for Nick Smith, but in all likelihood, I'm going to guess that he just had a couple good games, a good fit for the Lakers, and you need that throughout the regular season. And if you're going to have a high seed, you need players like Nick Smith to step up. But what I'm talking about is playoff depth. It's like that famous, I think, Pat Riley quote that said, suit up 8, rotate 7, play 6, trust 5, or whatever that quote was. That's what really matters come the playoff time. Do you have enough guys that you can trust? Because that 9-10 man rotation you have in the regular season is great, but that doesn't necessarily work in the playoffs. And so that was the question for the Lakers. Yes, you had Luka. You could trust him. You will probably get LeBron back, and assuming he's healthy, you obviously trust him. Austin Reeves, I think, definitely trust him at this point. He's been another great story for the Lakers. I don't want to get him forgotten about. But then the question is, after those three, are there enough players you trust and trust come playoffs? And I know we're only 9 games in, so I don't want to make just big realizations for the playoffs that are still months away. But early on in the season, DeAndre Ayton looks pretty good. I think everyone overreacted to that first game, but he's settled in nicely since then. Marcus Smart looks like a huge addition right now for the Lakers. He's kind of their defensive captain. He looks energized. He's just diving after loose balls, making all the small plays. He's somebody I would trust right now in a playoff series. And then Jake LaRavia. Everyone knows who he is now, number 12 on the Lakers. He's looked not only like a nice piece early on, I think he's also somebody you can trust in a playoff series. And then Rui Hachimura, I think is a good player. He's going to have his on-off games, but he's somebody at least in a rotation I would trust come playoff time. And that doesn't include Gabe Vincent, who has missed some time. I would still trust him. So now you're talking about 7 or 8 players that I would feel comfortable with the Lakers throwing out there. And that, I think, is the biggest storyline. Outside of Luka and Austin Reeves going crazy, that is the thing that excites me the most about this Lakers team. Is not the fact that they have Luka, who can score 40, Austin Reeves, who has proven, if needed, he can score 40, but it's how the others have fit in. And that is, to me, what makes them a serious contender. Because Luka can only take you so far. Austin Reeves can only take you so far. To be a serious contender, you have to have others. And I think the others have stepped up, at least through the first 9 games. We'll see if that continues. The only other thing that I want to talk about with this Lakers team is it's funny to me that once Luka starts playing well, once Austin Reeves starts playing well, everyone just kind of throws LeBron aside and says, oh, the Lakers don't need him. They have Luka, they have Austin Reeves. It's time to trade LeBron. And I get that a lot of those people just aren't serious basketball people. They might not like LeBron, all of that. But I do think there's a lot of legitimate chatter that says, oh yeah, the Lakers, they have their 2 guys. They don't need LeBron. Time to trade LeBron. Let him go somewhere else. Bring in some other pieces. When to me, this is kind of the exact opposite situation. I think if it was the opposite, if maybe Austin Reeves was struggling, if Luka was struggling, or if he got hurt, then would be a good time to trade LeBron, or at least consider it. Not saying it's actually going to happen. But if you have a team that has 2 really good options, and if you have a team that I just mentioned, I think has a really good shot to compete for a finals, this is the perfect LeBron team. He's in his 40s now. He's not going to lead a team, but he also still wants to compete and compete for championships. And I think this Lakers team is probably his best shot at doing it. Yes, a couple other teams he could probably go to, have a good shot to win. But if he wants to stay in LA, if he, wants to play with his son and have a chance to win, this team is as good as any. So why would LeBron want to leave? And then I think the same on the flip side. The Lakers, I think, have a good shot to compete this year. They have Luka, they have Austin Reeves. If you're looking for a third option, and I don't even want to call LeBron a third option, but if you're looking for a third banana to bring into this team, there's probably nobody else that would be any better than LeBron. And that's LeBron assuming he's healthy. And that's the assumption we're making, is he will be healthy at some point. But to me, this is the perfect opportunity for both sides. LeBron is going to get his chance to compete, to play in meaningful games. And the Lakers are going to get a still really good player, regardless of his age, that can fit with Luka and Austin Reeves. And so to me, this is the perfect opportunity for LeBron to come back. And it's another reason why they're a legitimate contenders. Is Luka and Austin Reeves are great. Throw in LeBron in that mix. That's as great of a big 3, quote unquote, as anybody. And if you put those 3 with the role players that I mentioned, it's a good team. And I don't think it's just going to be smooth sailing. I think there will be ups and downs. But when it matters, I think this team is going to compete. I do think they're going to be one of the teams that is at least right in the consideration in the West. That's enough Lakers talk. Let's go on to the second kind of big headline that I had from this week. And that is all the Ja Morant stuff that has gone on. And it is trending towards a direction that Grizzlies fans aren't looking forward to. Grizzlies fans just probably are just disappointed and just in shock about this whole thing. I am generally somebody that doesn't want to just automatically move the star player from a team. I think, especially in the NBA, stars really matter. Stars matter on the court, they matter off the court. And it's easy to see a star that is maybe not happy or not playing well Ja Morant's case, it's probably both. And just automatically say, oh, it's time to pull up the trade machine. Let's move him. I think that's happening with Giannis. It's easy to see, a star and think of all the fun possibilities to move them. And we're all guilty of it. I've talked about Giannis trades a lot. It still might happen, but again, that's how quick we are to judge. So I typically don't want to just automatically assume that, yes, a star is going to get traded. But I think this Grizzlies situation is just almost trending towards the inevitable. And I think this Ja Morant situation is getting to the point where there's no turning back, and we're really just heading for a breakup. And like I mentioned at the top, if you're the Grizzlies fan base, it's probably the worst case scenario you could have imagined from the past few years. I mean, if you imagine just even a few years ago, Ja Morant looked to be one of the bright young stars. There were some concerns, but still, you had one of the best young players in the league you could build around. But if you look at the last 3 years, it's gone about as bad as you could have hoped if you're the Grizzlies. The last 2 years, he's only played 59 games over the past 2 seasons. Some of that was injuries, some of that were suspensions. And then you get to this year, and he's already been suspended for 1 game by the team. He's already called out the coaches. He's already had a pretty public dispute with himself and the coaches or the organization or just all of the Grizzlies. And so now you went from a player 3 years ago who looked like one of the best young stars probably in the league to now somebody who has had character concerns, who has had injury concerns. And on top of all of that, on top of all the off the court stuff, he's also a kind of a diminishing player. And I called him a star at the beginning. I said it's hard to trade stars, trade superstars. And I would still probably count him a star, but he's a star that's starting to lose his light. He's definitely not the same player he was. It's early so far this year, but he's still averaging 20 points per game, but he's 14% from 3. He just doesn't seem to have quite the same burst and quite the same finishing that he does inside. And that was always the concern. If you take away any of the injuries, any of the character concerns, the concern with Ja Morant right from when he came in was, could he continue this high flying act? Could he, mature and become a great basketball player? I still think there's a great basketball player in him, despite some of the, injury concerns that you have when you play like that. But the last couple years and early on to start this year, it doesn't look good. He is taking more threes than ever. 30% of his shots are from 3. He's taking 5 a game, and he's shooting 14%, as I mentioned. He is the 4th worst isolation player this year. A lot of what he does is kind of dribble around at the top. Teams try to dare him to shoot. He does shoot, as I mentioned, 30% of the time. But he just tries to play around a little bit, get to his, patented little floater game inside, get into the paint. And right now that's just not working. And the Grizzlies look like a team that's slowly headed for just a blow it up situation. And Ja Morant, it used to be that, okay, yeah, it's time to blow it up. Let's trade Ja Morant. We'll get a huge package. I don't know if that's the case anymore. With all the concerns about him, this isn't the case where you can just cash in, get a great package. The Grizzlies would still get some, and we're going to talk about some of the teams that might consider him. But this isn't what the Grizzlies, it's not what the Grizzlies fans were hoping for when they drafted Ja Morant. And I think that's pretty clear at this point. In terms of who would consider trading for him, because you could make the argument with the on-court stuff, with the character concerns, with the injury concerns that he has, you could argue that nobody's going to want him. At least nobody's going to want him at the price that it would take. You start going through the list of teams. A lot of teams either have a point guard. A lot of teams have either their roster in place, whether that be, young guys or veterans. And then there are some teams that I just can't imagine would take on Ja Morant and take on that risk. So after you take out a lot of teams, there's only a few teams left. And the rumor has been really 3 teams. It's been Minnesota, it's been Sacramento, and it's been Houston. I couldn't really see Houston taking that risk. And of course, I say that could be that the Rockets next month trade for him. In theory, it might make sense. They lost Fred VanVleet. They are a championship contender. So bringing in Ja Morant would help. And in normal circumstances, the Rockets wouldn't necessarily have enough to trade for him. I think they could pull it off now with his diminished value. But I don't see the Rockets taking that risk. I think they have enough with Kevin Durant, with Şengün, with Amen Thompson, all the other role players they have. Ja Morant would be fun, and in theory, if it works, it's great. But I don't think it's a good fit. I don't think they take on that risk. Sacramento, as other people have mentioned, Sacramento is just the perfect Ja Morant team in theory, and really the perfect organization. It's an organization that really isn't that serious about winning, but wants big stars. And I think there's really no other example than Ja Morant right now that would fit that. How it would work with the trade, with the already just weird roster that they put together, who knows? But the Kings are somebody that would talk themselves into Ja Morant. I could see that happening. And then the other one is Minnesota. We all want to see it. Ja Morant, Anthony Edwards backcourt would be a lot of fun. And when they are right, Minnesota could talk themselves into that being their championship backcourt. Because if Anthony Edwards, if Minnesota can help Ja Morant, that's as dangerous of a backcourt as you could see. So I'm not ruling it out. Again, would Minnesota take that risk? Who knows? But if they want to maybe go all in and say, hey, this team led by Anthony Edwards has a chance, I could see that happening. I do think that's a risk. NBA fans would love to see it. Whether it happens or not, who knows? But those are the 3 teams that I think have been rumored. You could make the case for, other maybe rebuilding teams like a Toronto. They just need talent. You can make the case they might make an offer. And then other teams that just always want stars, whether that's Miami, they could use a guard. Who knows if they would even come close to a Ja Morant with the culture they have, but that's another team to consider. I do think, as I mentioned, we're heading for a breakup, so we're going to talk more Ja Morant probably as this goes on. Maybe Memphis just fixes it in some way, but I think we're headed toward a breakup, so we're going to talk more Ja Morant trades probably over the next couple months, but it's definitely a storyline to watch. But let's go to a couple last things to wrap up, starting with stats that matter. I only got 2 stats this week, but I really think they matter. Obviously, the headline. The first stat that I think matters is Denver's net rating right now with Jokic off the court. If you take out all the kind of garbage time, if you take out all the low leverage, it's sitting at negative 5.34. And you might say that's not great. And when he's on the court in that same time, their net rating is 16. So pretty dramatic still difference between when he's on and off the court. But when you look at the last 4 years, and specifically the last couple years, it's been negative 10.2. It's been negative 10.4. 3 years ago it was negative 8. 4 years ago it was negative 7. So this is the first time since the 2020-21 season that the Nuggets are at least this close to being an average team when Jokic is off the court. And that to me is huge. And that was a big reason and a big point of concern for the Nuggets going into this offseason is how could they just survive the minutes with Jokic off the court? They don't need to be a great team. And in this case, they're still a below average team, but they just needed to survive because the numbers show it the last few years. They've been terrible without him. And even the eye test, you can see when he's off the court, they've been terrible. So they made the decision. They brought in Jonas Valanciunas. They brought in guys like Bruce Brown. They brought in guys like Tim Hardaway to try to survive the non-Jokic minutes. And so far, it's working. I get still early, the whole, early season stat caveat. But right now, the Nuggets are doing better in the non-Jokic minutes. And that's going to be huge for them throughout the season. The other stat that I think matters is one of my favorite teams to watch right now is the Portland Trail Blazers. And mainly because of their defense. Offense isn't great still, but their defense is elite. And you can make the case one of the best defenses in the league. And they are averaging 11.6 steals per game. And that, again, is early, so that number will probably come down. But right now, they are the 6th highest team ever in terms of steals per game as a team. And the Thunder, they had 10.3 steals last year. Another great defense that we talked about. Other than them, we haven't had a team get even close to that since 2002, when the 76ers had 10.3 steals. So the Trailblazers are an elite defense that shows up in the box score, that shows up in the games when you watch them. And what's makes their defense really good, and what makes numbers like this matter, is it's not like it's one guy that's averaging 5 steals a game. They have a lot of guys that are good defenders, that are long, can get steals. They have 7 guys that are averaging 1 steal per game. So they're spreading it out, whether it's Toumani Camara, whether it's Drew Holiday, who they brought in, whether it's Matisse Thybulle. Doesn't get a ton of minutes, but he gets a ton of steals when he's out there. Shaedon Sharpe, even he has some length and some defense when he tries. They have just a lot of great defenders. Their offense is going to limit them, which is why I don't know how seriously we can take their start. But at least defensively, they're a great team. And if you like defense, they're really fun to watch. And then before we wrap up, let's go through my players of the week. As I mentioned, this is just for week 2, and I am doing my videos every Friday. So this is from last Friday through this Thursday. So from this week 2 in the NBA, I'm going to give 5 probably players of the week that kind of mirror, a team. Think of it like the first team of the week. And then I'm going to give 5 other players that are my just players to watch that I think maybe didn't have the best of stats, but I really enjoyed watching. I'm really looking into from this week. Think of it as the breakout players, the players to watch, whatever you want to call it. So let's go through my first team players to start. Luka has to be one of my guards. He missed 1 game, but other than that, there's a legitimate chance he can score an average 40 a game this year. He's got to be on my team. Donovan Mitchell, there was, I think, some chatter that he wasn't a good player. He goes out and drops, I think, 46. I forgot exactly what the number was. He's got to be on my list. And then I'm going to give another guard spot to Josh Giddey, who we haven't had a ton of time to talk about the Bulls this year. But the Bulls, as I mentioned in last week's episode, they're a very fun offensive team to watch. And this Josh Giddey, Alex Caruso trade is a really interesting one. I want to spend more time talking about it, so I'm going to probably save that for next week. But Josh Giddey, I wanted to give a shout out for this week. Giannis, he was on my list last week. He's probably going to be on it for most weeks. He's quiet. We all know what he's going to be capable of. And yet most weeks he's still going to be on this list just because of how good he is. So he is on my list. And then speaking of just quiet dominance, Nikola Jokic makes his first appearance. I think people overreacted to his first game or first couple games. He's going to average a triple-double. He's going to be efficient doing it. He is still one of the best players in the league. So Giannis and Jokic are my 2 bigs. My 5 players to watch are a lot of young guys in this case, and a lot of guys that I'm really intrigued, not only this week, but throughout the season to watch. Amen Thompson is my first guard. I mentioned him just briefly when we talked about the Rockets earlier. Yes, they have a lot of good players, but there's a reason why a lot of people thought Amen Thompson was going to be just a breakout player this year. It's going to take a little bit to get used to, having Durant, having Şengün, having a lot of other guys that will take shots, but he's going to do everything that you need, and he's only going to get better. So he's one of my players to watch. In a similar situation, Stephon Castle, he's going to be my other guard. A lot of the talk obviously is on Wemby, rightfully so. A lot of the talk is on Dylan Harper. We talked about him last week. But Stephon Castle looks like he's taking a second-year jump. I really liked him last year, really liked him at UConn, and I really liked him again this year. He only looks like he's getting better, which is good to see for the Spurs. The third guy is a rookie, and that's Con Knippel, who was kind of a surprise top pick in this last year's draft. A lot of the coverage went to Cooper Flagg, to Dylan Harper, to guys like Ace Bailey. And Con Knippel, some people question his ceiling, but I think the good thing about him is he's showing really early on he has a very, very high floor. And the question to me still is going to be, can he be a big star in this league? But at a minimum, he's going to be a really, really good player. And I think, we're talking about playoff rotations. at a minimum right now, I think he's a playoff rotation guy. He's going to be a great shooter, but he does everything else around that really good. A la, a Klay Thompson, a JJ Redick. These shooters that can shoot, and that's their calling card, but you got to be able to do other things. And I think Knipple is showing that early on, so I wanted to shout him out. And then my two bigs are two very different bigs, but I'm going to go with Alex Sarr of Washington and Jalen Duren for Detroit. Duren is your more just prototypical big athletic center. Him and Cade look like a great duo, a great young duo. Tons of potential for Detroit, who is also having a great season. We'll talk about them more later. And then Alex Sarr is this long, lanky, can stretch you out from deep, but can also protect inside. And I know he got lost in a draft last year that wasn't that good, and I think we will probably look back on it as not being that good. But Alex Sarr is still young and is starting to put some pieces together that look like he could be a really, really good player in this league. So Sarr, Duren, two very different bigs, but two bigs that I like this year, along with Amen Thompson, Castle, and Knipple for my players to watch from this week. And that is going to wrap up everything from week 2. As I mentioned, NBA weekly episodes are coming out every Friday. So if you liked this, if you want to see more of this content, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Check out my NFL episodes that come out on Tuesdays, NBA, as I mentioned, on Fridays. More stuff coming as well, along with these summary episodes. So again, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more, and we will see you in the next video.